If you've ever gotten off a discovery call and thought they said no because of the price, it's almost never just the price. As coaches and practitioners, we often think that our programs are getting turned down because people can't afford them, especially if you're selling high ticket. But after years of coaching entrepreneurs and reviewing hundreds of sales calls, I can tell you with confidence that when someone who's a great fit for your program actually says no, it's usually because of how the sales call was led. So today I'm going to break down the most common mistakes that I see coaches, practitioners, and experts making in their sales conversations. And more importantly, I'm going to share with you the belief shifts that you need to make if you want to close more high-ticket health clients. Because the truth is that sales is not about convincing or pressuring. It's truly about leadership, clarity, and helping somebody make a decision they already want to make. Now, if you're ready to go beyond surface level tips, this is exactly what I teach inside my Nourished Business Accelerator program. In this one-of-a-kind 6-month mentorship experience, we transform the way that you attract, enroll, and serve your dream health clients. Inside NBA, you'll also get access to a custom-built ChatGPT tool that will review your sales call transcripts and give you instant feedback, so you know exactly where to improve in real time. I've gotten so much great feedback from clients who have been using this tool, and their sales call close rate has gone up by 10, 20, 30% or more. And if you want access to that custom ChatGPT bot, that is inside Module 5 of our NBA program. Now let's talk about the 5 big mistakes that might be holding you back right now when it comes to effectively selling your high-ticket programs on sales calls. Mistake number 1 is leading with logic instead of emotion. Most coaches and practitioners start a sales call by rattling off all the deliverables somebody's going to get in their program. You get 8 sessions with me every other week. We'll run 2 functional labs. You'll get 24/7 messaging access behind the scenes. Now, that's great that you provide that as part of your offer, but all of that is logic-based. And here's the problem. People don't buy coaching, especially high-ticket offers, because of logic. They don't buy it because they want 8 sessions or specific labs or behind-the-scenes messaging with you. They buy coaching because they want to feel different. Now, logic can be an important part of their decision, but it's not really what drives sales decisions. In fact, it's emotion that drives sales decisions. So when you're on a sales call and you're leading with features and deliverables and specific details about your offer, you're putting your prospect in a logical headspace. And then what happens? They start to compare you to other programs. They start weighing the cost of the service versus how many sessions they get. They start doing the math. Well, if it's 8 sessions and it's $2,500, that's like $400 a session. They start to think about whether it's actually worth it in terms of the minutes that they're going to get with you, instead of the outcomes that you're going to help facilitate in the overall offer. The important belief shift here, if you want to stop emphasizing deliverables and start emphasizing emotion, is to stop thinking of sales conversations as just explaining what you do or answering questions. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't answer any questions for clients who have them, but that should not be the primary purpose of a sales conversation. I recommend that you start thinking of sales as specifically a process of connecting the prospect to the possibility of the transformation that they want most. Here's exactly how to start making this shift on your very next sales call. At the beginning of the call, I want you to ask the prospect, what inspired you to book this call today? Or if you have an application process like what we teach in our MBA program, you can say, what inspired you to apply for this program? And then I want you to listen carefully for the emotional cues in their response. So they might answer with some logic, but there's going to be some emotional connection there that was the big reason that they decided to move forward. Now, if you're not getting any emotion at all from the conversation, then you can ask questions to start drawing it out, but you want to make sure that you're actually listening for the emotion. And then instead of moving straight into explaining your program or answering logistical questions, you're going to spend some time reflecting their vision of transformation back to them. This is why taking notes during a sales call can be super helpful, especially if you're new to sales calls and you might struggle to remember what the person has said versus what you're, quote, supposed to say next. So if you're practicing sales calls, it's really great to have a little notepad beside you so you can write things down and make some notes about the things that are really emotionally driving your prospect's decision. And then you can reflect back to them something like, okay, so what I'm hearing is that you want to wake up with more energy, finally feel confident in your body, and stop worrying about your health so you can get back to focusing on your career. Did I get that right? So you want to confirm that what you repeated is accurate, because sometimes when we repeat what the person has said, they're like, actually, no, that's not really what I want. And we want to make sure that we're getting to exactly what they want on those sales conversations. But usually if the person has said it to you and you've written it down and you're really just repeating their words back, it's going to be pretty accurate to what the reason is that they're even on that call. Now, I'm not saying you should avoid talking about logistics or just keep all your offer details a secret, but you want to save those logistics until towards the end of the conversation, once the emotional connection has already been established. Because if you just blow right past that emotional connection and you just go straight into logistics and details and how many sessions there are and what time the calls are, that kind of thing, you're going to miss the opportunity to actually connect to the emotional buying decisions of your prospect. And they'll leave the call maybe feeling like, okay, that sounds interesting, but they're not going to be super motivated to enroll with you because you haven't connected them to what's going to change in their life once they've worked with you, once they've achieved the transformation that your offer helps them get. Mistake number 2 is accepting surface level goals and desires at face value. I personally struggle with this sometimes because I think, okay, like I don't want to push somebody to be saying something that they don't want to say or push too hard and then make somebody upset. But the calls that I do for my business to enroll people into our MBA program always work best when the person has gotten to a level of depth about their goals that actually feels meaningful. So when you ask a client on the call, or a potential client, I should say, on the call what they want, they may say something like, I want to lose 20 pounds, or I want to balance my hormones. Or if you're like me, my clients will say, well, I want to get my business off the ground. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with those goals. But if you stop there, you've really only scratched the surface to what they want. Because ultimately, losing weight, balancing your hormones, or even getting your business off the ground doesn't really necessarily mean anything without the emotional connection. People rarely buy coaching just for the number on the scale or the words on their vision board, or they feel like, okay, I should be doing XYZ because my doctor said I should. That's important, but it's not generally going to be the thing that drives somebody to make a really big decision to invest in their results. There's got to be something bigger underneath that goal that's connected to their identity, their relationships, their confidence, and even the opportunities that they have in their life. It's rare that somebody's situation, whether it's health related, business related, anything that's going on that they want to see a change in, it's rare that that is in a silo and it's not affecting anything else. It's probably affecting their relationship with their partner, their ability to enjoy being a parent, their ability to get the promotion at work, their ability to enjoy their life on a day-to-day basis. There's a lot of different ripple effects that many different health conditions and really any sort of problem that somebody's experiencing can actually create in somebody's life. And so your job is to help them uncover what that goal really means for their life, not just to hear the goal, write it down. Okay, yeah, you want to lose 20 pounds. Why do they actually want to lose 20 pounds? What does losing 20 pounds give them? What's going to happen if they don't lose those 20 pounds? We really want to get all that information on a call as much as possible, because that is actually what they're buying. We're going to dig deeper with some specific questions that you can ask so that you're not just stopping at that surface level goal. This can be very simple. You can ask, okay, you want to lose 20 pounds. Why is that important to you to lose 20 pounds right now? And we say right now because timing is important. Maybe it's important to them to lose 20 pounds, but if it's not important right now, then it's probably not going to be something they're going to invest in right now. So we really want to create some time-bound reasoning for them in that conversation. And then we can start to future pace. So you can ask them, okay, so if you achieve that, if you did lose 20 pounds, how would your daily life look different? What would change? So this is where we're future pacing about what would their life look like if they actually achieve that goal. Because it's rare that somebody's just going to be like, well, I would lose 20 pounds and everything else would be the same. They're probably not going to invest in coaching if that's how they feel. So they're going to say things like, well, it would be much more enjoyable to get dressed in the morning. I wouldn't dread it going into my closet. I could wear all the clothes in there that I love. I would be much more active and I'd be able to do things with my kids that would be more enjoyable because I'm not like huffing and puffing, trying to chase them down the sidewalk. Things like that. Everyone's reasoning is going to be different. We want to find the reasoning that's important to the individual, and whatever they think is the important reason is what we want to speak to. Now, we can also ask them, okay, so let's say that you achieve your goal, you lose 20 pounds, you're enjoying getting dressed in the morning, you're running after your kids without running out of breath. If that was happening for you, what else would that allow you to experience in the long run? So then we're really getting to that bigger overall ripple effect. We're starting to look at what are the core values that are driving their investment decisions, and how does this decision to work with somebody to reach that goal, so in this case, losing 20 pounds, how is that actually going to then ripple out into their life in a way that speaks to their core values? When somebody says something to you, you want to mirror their answers back to them to make sure that this is actually what is important to them. So you can say something like, okay, so it's not just about losing weight. It's about getting dressed in the morning and actually feeling good about what you look like, or feeling confident enough to take pictures with your family on vacation without worrying about what your body looks like, or being able to go on a date night with your husband and really feel connected to him instead of feeling gross about your body and having to eat a salad instead of the food that you actually really want to eat. That could be some of the reasons why somebody wants to achieve that goal. And you want to reflect that back to them to make sure that you're getting it right and that that is actually the reason why it's important to them. You also want to make sure if you're taking notes that you're writing down the emotional why in those notes. So don't just write down, take pictures with family. You want to write things down like, feel confident, not stop dreading getting dressed, stop hiding in pictures, feel proud of what I look like, those kind of emotional reasons. You want to make sure you have that in your notes so that you can circle back to that when it's time for them to make the purchasing decision. Because again, even if you start to get into questions about the logistics of the offer, you do want to circle back and say, okay, let's review what your goal is, what you want to accomplish by enrolling in this program, and why it matters to you. So really bringing it back to the emotional bigger picture as opposed to just ending with those logistical Q&As. It's important to remember that when somebody is buying coaching, consulting, any sort of service from you as an expert, they are not just buying sessions, and we don't want to lead with that. What they're actually buying is a future that feels better than their current reality. And that's what we want to speak to, the future possibility that really is meaningful to them. Mistake number 3 is a big one, and that is treating the spouse objection as the end of the road. There's really 3 universal objections that'll come up on any sales call: money, time, and spouse. There's going to be individual niche specific objections, but those are the 3 that are pretty universal to any B2C, business to customer type of offer. How many times have you gotten to the end of a sales call and the person says, okay, all this sounds great. This sounds like exactly what I want. I just need to talk to my husband, or I just need to talk to my partner. That can feel really frustrating because you're like, oh, we were right there. They wanted to say yes. And now they're using this quote unquote objection to talk to their spouse. Now, I don't think spouse conversations are specifically objections. I know for me personally, I have rules about spending money and not just like spending money without talking to my husband. Now, usually if it's business related, he's less involved in that decision because I run the business, I own it, I get to decide what we do with the money. But if we're doing a personal investment, I'm not going to just hide it from him. So it is important to respect the guidelines or the boundaries that somebody has with their partner, with their spouse, with their significant other, whoever they're saying they need to go talk to. But here's what I've learned after doing hundreds of sales calls, mostly with women and mostly with people who are married. The objection usually isn't about the spouse not supporting the person. It's actually about the prospect's own uncertainty. So if it's a true objection, if it's really like, oh, I really got to talk to my husband about this, it's probably not that the person is fully on board and the husband is like not going to support them, right? So if that prospect is not fully convinced themselves that your offer is what they want, that they're ready to invest, that it's a yes for them, then it's actually a really convenient reason or excuse to use the partner as a way to delay or avoid making the decision. This is much more common for women. I don't want to be sexist or make any broad sweeping statements, but it's a lot more common for a woman to not trust her own decisions and have to go talk to her partner than for a man to feel like he has to go talk to his spouse. Again, broad brush strokes on that, but that is something that I see much more often, that the woman is the one that needs to go ask the partner to make the decision. So ultimately, for most women, if they use the partner conversation as, well, I can't make any decision until I talk to them, we need to dig deeper into that, because truly in most situations, unless obviously there's like financial abuse or something going on behind the scenes that obviously would make that probably not the best person to work with, if the person's in a supportive relationship, it's rare that the spouse or the partner would be the one who actually makes the decision for that person. So the person is the one who ultimately is the one that makes the decision. And their conviction about whether that offer is right for them or not is what's going to influence the outcome of the conversation with their partner. So if they go into a conversation with their partner and they're like, oh, I don't know, I'm not sure, I'm nervous. What if this doesn't work? I've already tried this. Maybe I should do something different. If they go into the conversation like that, their partner is going to be a lot more hesitant, and they're going to want to pump the brakes about making an investment, especially if it's a higher ticket investment. Versus if the person comes into the conversation and says, hey, honey, I just had a call with so-and-so and this is what we talked about, and I really think this is the right thing to do. Are you okay with it if I invest in this? But they're really more just checking that the partner is on board versus getting the partner to make the decision for them or wanting their partner to basically convince them that it's the right thing to do. Now, sometimes if the partner is really supportive and knows their partner is prone to self-doubt and maybe needs that encouragement, then sometimes, yes, the partner, the spouse that's being talked to can actually drive the yes. But we don't want to make that assumption, because honestly, that's not as common as having a partner that would say, hey, this doesn't sound like a good thing for us to do right now if you're not sure about it. So in order to make sure that you're addressing this particular objection effectively and not just leaving the person to go talk to their spouse and then get all nervous about it and make their partner feel nervous, and then everyone's like, I don't know if this is the right move, and then they just don't move forward, you want to make sure that you come to a final decision on the call for the individual person. So you're not necessarily getting them to say yes and spending money and then getting in trouble with their partner later because they didn't run it by them. You just want them to own the decision before they go talk to their spouse. So you can ask them, okay, if your spouse said that they trust you and that they're happy for you to do whatever feels best, and if this is the right next step for you, then go for it, what would you want to do? So you can see with a question like that, you are really allowing the person to get back into their own decision-making capacity. And whether or not the partner would actually respond like that is kind of irrelevant, because we want this person to imagine that the partner is fully on board and that they can now make the decision for themselves. So if the person's like, oh yeah, definitely, like if he said he was good with it, I'd be a yes right now. I'd, be paying you in this exact moment. Then it's really just one of those logistical things where they want to run it by their partner as a sign of respect. And it's not going to be something where it's like all of a sudden turning it into a no. Now, if they hesitate, if they're like, oh, I'm not sure, if he said it was fine for me to do it, I'm still not sure, then that means that the person needs more clarity for themselves. And ideally, you shouldn't let them get off the call until they feel that clarity. So you're not going to just start piling on more information or rattling off more deliverables, more bonuses, all the things that they're going to get. What you're going to do is you're going to revisit the why for why they want to reach that goal and the emotional, deeper connection that they have to achieving that goal. So as an example, you can say, all right, so you shared that having energy to play with your kids without pain, without struggling to get up and down off the floor, that is really important to you right now. So what's holding you back today from saying yes to making that happen? That way you can start to, first of all, remind them of what they said about why they want to achieve that goal in the first place. And then you'll also be able to help them uncover the hesitation in their own mind because then you're going to start pulling out the actual objections, which actually have nothing to do with their spouse. So maybe they say something like, yeah, I really am just wondering if this is actually going to work for me. I've tried so many things before, and every time I get into a coaching program, I just totally fall off the wagon and I never end up actually making any long-term changes. So that is something that can be addressed in a conversation that actually has nothing to do with the spouse. And they were just saying they wanted to talk to their partner because they wanted to talk to somebody about that exact concern, or they just felt that internal hesitance, and their go-to response when they feel that way is to go get reassurance by their partner. So there's different ways you can handle it, but ultimately when you have that spouse objection, you really want to uncover, okay, is this truly just a check-in with your partner and you're generally going to assume he's on board and you're just being respectful? Or is there a reason that you actually are hesitant to move forward that we need to get to the bottom of so you can make a confident decision for yourself? I have always had the experience where, and again, I don't want to be sexist, but if a woman feels unsure about going after what she wants, investing in herself, taking her goals seriously, if she goes into the conversation with her partner feeling really confident and saying, this sounds like exactly what I'm looking for, I'm really excited about this, here's what this coach is going to help me do, 9 times out of 10, the partner is like, okay, awesome, sounds great, I trust you, go for it. Once in a while, you might get a partner who is much more skeptical. In that case, you might need to have a conversation with the partner. That's like a whole different episode. But if you can get that person, usually the woman, feeling really confident about the decision, the conversation with their partner truly is going to be hey, I just want to check out of respect to you, but this is what I really want to do, versus this fear-based, like, I don't know if this is the right thing. And then their partner reasonably is like, well, if you're not sure, maybe we shouldn't do it. That's a lot of money to spend, right? So when you handle the spouse objection like this, you're respecting their relationship. You're not trying to convince them to make the purchase decision without actually checking with their spouse, which is like fully unethical. But you also help them step into their own conviction, which first of all is going to make that conversation go much better. Second of all, you're going to have a much happier client coming in because they are going to be 100% committed to the work because they feel convicted about what you're going to help them do. Mistake number 4 is ending your call without a clear decision path. And this is another one I tend to struggle with because I'm the kind of person that I don't need to be hounded about making a decision if I've had a sales conversation with somebody. I generally respect other people's time enough to get back to them and have my own timeline on that. Unfortunately, most people do not necessarily operate that way. It can be really easy to assume that everyone acts the way we do. My husband has constantly reminded me that that's not a thing and that we should assume that the person needs a strong decision container to actually take the next steps and finalize the decision. A big mistake that I see a lot with the people that I work with is that they end their call saying, okay, well, just let me know. I'll send you a message about the offer details and you can just let me know if you want to do it. Great talking to you. Hang up. Now that feels like a polite way to end a call, but here's what happens when you do it that way. The client leaves being uncertain about what their next steps are. Life gets busy, their HVAC breaks. Now they have money that has to go to that. And they start to delay or put off the decision. Their initial excitement fades. That emotional connection that you had on the call is like starting to fizzle out. And then they ghost. Usually that's not because they're being rude. If they ghost, it's because life got distracting and they just forgot about it because the importance and the urgency dissipated because you didn't give them a specific timeline on making the decision. So it's not because they just didn't want the program. I mean, sometimes people will literally lie to your face because they just don't want to say no. It happens. I'm not the kind of person that is uncomfortable saying no, but I know there's a lot of people who are. But a lot of times it's not that they think the program just wasn't a good fit for them. It's because there wasn't a clear next step to take with a deadline on when to take it. So the belief shift that you want to operate within here is remembering that your role is to lead the decision process. So your role isn't to just be this like friendly conversation maker or deep listener or empathetic conversation person. Yes, all of that is helpful, but you need to show up with a sales call being in the leadership seat. And if you're not leading the decision process, if you're not giving them clear next steps, they're not likely to follow through. Some people are very self-led, but if they're not self-led and they need to be led by you and you're not leading them, they probably will end up kind of just disappearing. And you'll just be wondering, well, I thought that call went so well. Why are they not signing up? So it's really, really important to make sure that you're ending the call with a clear next step and a clear deadline. So before you end your call, ask them to agree to the next step, and you get to decide what that next step is. If you have the next step as doing a follow-up call, if you have a next step as doing an email conversation, if you have a next step as I'm going to send you the link and you need to, enroll by this date to officially lock in your spot, you can decide what the next step is going to be, but you want to make sure it's very clear and that the person has agreed to it. So you can say something like, are you able to decide by Thursday so we can hold your spot about this offer? Let me know. I'll put a note in my calendar to check in with you. Or you can say, my next step of my process is to book a 10-minute final decision call. That way we can chat about any last minute questions you have. And if you are ready to sign up, we can get you enrolled on the phone. How does that sound to you? And so if somebody won't actually do the next step, then that can be a sign that they're not really interested in the offer and they're just trying to get off the call. But for somebody who's serious, if you say, okay, the next step is a 10-minute follow-up call and I'd like to do that in the next 3 days, what time do you have available between now and next Thursday? That, with somebody who's serious, is going to be a much more specific and tangible next step because they want to follow your guidelines as far as the relationship is concerned as a coach and a client. So don't just hang up the call being like, okay, let me know what you want to do. Make sure there's a clear next step with a specific timeline so that people know, okay, if I want to do this, I need to make a decision by this date, and this is the next thing I need to do. So this helps minimize the risk of ghosting and gives them that decision container so they're not just kicking the can down the road and then forgetting about it months later. Now, you do want to frame this as support and not pressure. This is not some okay, if you don't sign up in the next 2 days, you can never work with me. We're not coming at it from that kind of energy. We're really framing it as, I want you to feel confident about this decision. And generally, if you wait more than a few days, it's going to start getting muddy. It's going to start feeling uncertain, and then you're not going to be able to make a confident decision. So I'd love to reconnect tomorrow if we can jump on a 10-minute call just to finalize things. That's my process for my next step. Is that okay with you? We're not pressuring them. We're not doing this whole this deal is going away forever if you don't make a decision in the next 3 hours. That's a really bro-y sales tactic. But we don't want to swing in the other direction and just be totally up in the air, flipping okay, just let me know if you want to do it, because that's not going to lead to the most decisive movement forward. And it's also not going to give that person a great sense that you're going to be able to lead them through a coaching experience as somebody who holds them accountable and helps them actually take action towards their goals. So when the client knows exactly when and how they'll decide and what the next steps are, they're going to feel much more guided in the process. And that, whether consciously or subconsciously, will demonstrate to them that they can trust you to guide them in the actual service. Mistake number 5 is the belief that more information is what's going to close the sale. So if you're starting to notice some hesitation in the conversation, if they're like, oh, I'm not sure, it's really common to try to convince them why they should join based on all the information that you want to provide. So when a coach or a practitioner senses some hesitation on that call, they start explaining more about the science of the offer, okay, this is how this works, and this is exactly what we're going to do together, and here's all the evidence that supports why this is going to work for you. They'll give more details about the program structure and why it's so valuable. They'll just go on and on about features, this is why this is going to work so well. And it starts to get into that convincing energy. But the reality is that information overload when somebody's feeling hesitation actually creates more confusion. And as they say, the confused mind doesn't buy. So the belief shift I want you to adopt when somebody is starting to experience some hesitation is to get back into that leadership seat and to really give them space to process their hesitation and to ask good questions that allow them to move through that hesitation. Because honestly, If this is something they've wanted for a while, if it's a big goal of theirs, if it's a big investment for them, there is going to be some fear that comes up. It's just natural. And we don't want to bombard that with all this information that then makes them feel overwhelmed. So if you are going to share details, limit yourself to just a couple of key points about your offer that are related to the specific things that they're asking questions about or concerned about. And if they start digging for more and more details, then you want to keep it surface level and then bring the conversation back to the results and the outcome and the reason why they want those results. So let's say the person's asking about, okay, well, do you run labs for, do you run a Dutch test to help me identify my hormones? And you can say something like, yes, we do XYZ labs. I run a Dutch test and we'll look at blah, blah, blah. But the most important thing is with that test results, by week 6, you'll finally have clear answers about why your hormones are acting the way that they are, why your PMS is so bad. And we're going to use that information to come up with a custom diet and supplement routine so that you'll have a clear plan moving forward to start healing your hormones, getting your energy back, eliminating your PMS pain, and starting to really have the balanced hormones every month that you've been wanting. How does that sound? So again, you're going back to what's the purpose of the deliverable rather than giving off all these details about the specific deliverable. Another thing that can be really helpful is practicing pausing. This is one that I've had to practice a lot because I can talk a lot, and if I don't pause and if I don't give that space for silence, I have that tendency to fill the space, right? I think this is a really common one for a lot of us where we're not comfortable with silence going on for a long time and we want to rush in and fill it. But one of the best things that you can do in a sales conversation is actually leave space for dead air and to let the person process and to not keep talking and to not keep asking questions, but to really let them sit there and have the thoughts that they need to have without interrupting their process. So you do not need to fill silence with more information or more questions. Silence is often what gives your prospect the opportunity and the space to make a decision. And if you're not letting them have that space, they're going to keep circling the decision and never end up actually making it. So those are my 5 recommendations for the mindset shifts that are going to help you overcome objections that are common on sales calls, to make sure that you're not confusing your prospect with too many details and actually preventing them from making a decision, and really making sure that you are focusing on what truly matters in a sales conversation, which is the transformation that your client wants and why that matters to them at an emotional level. So now you might be thinking, okay, so if this is supposedly so simple, why do so many smart, capable coaches continue to make these mistakes? I've thought this myself because I will notice myself sometimes on sales calls getting back into these bad habits of talking too much, of explaining too much, of not leaving enough space. And I'm somebody who's literally fully trained in this. So what gives? Why do we tend to make this mistake over and over? I think it's because we have been taught to think that sales is about explaining and giving information. A lot of the people I work with, and myself included, tend to be very logical. We're highly educated. We want to find the facts. We want the evidence. We want the science. So we think that that's what's going to actually drive a sales decision. And we believe that if we just give enough information, the value will become obvious to the person. And of course, they're going to buy. But as I said at the beginning of this episode, sales is not about giving tons of information. It's about connecting the person who's making the purchasing decision with the ultimate value of the investment. And that value, 90% of it tends to be emotional. So selling is not about providing information. It's about speaking to the likelihood of a transformation. It's about helping your prospect see what's actually possible for them when they take this next step. It helps them uncover what's actually costing them to not make this change, to not get help, and to help them step into a big decision that can feel scary, that most aligns with the future that they really want. And for a lot of people, they've never had anyone actually care that much about their goals, their dreams, their desires. And you might be the first person that's ever had those conversations with that person. So don't be afraid to lead the person in a way that shows them this is what you can achieve when you have the support, when you have the process that we go through, and when you have all of the resources and the guidance and the coaching and the support that I'm going to give you inside this offer. Here is what is possible for you, and here's how your future can look different. Now, I will say that when you're in the middle of a sales call, depending on if you are trying to learn sales strategy and you're practicing it, or if you're seasoned like me and you're just falling into bad habits, it's really hard for us to see our blind spots when we're doing our own sales calls. And a lot of times if a sales call goes sideways, we get off the call and we're like, oh, I'm not really sure what happened. When you're in the middle of a sales call, it's very difficult to tell when you've actually started to slip into logic. It's also easy to talk yourself into circles and repeat yourself over and over because you're nervous, you want to make the sale, you want to come across as confident, and that actually then confuses the prospect even more. It's hard to see that you're doing it. For me personally, I've gotten better at seeing when I do make those mistakes. There's a concept called conscious incompetence. I don't think I'm incompetent, but anytime that I'm doing something that I'm like, oh, I know I shouldn't be doing that, I'm very aware that I'm doing it. So I've built a level of knowledge and skill set around sales that I can tell when I'm starting to do things in a less effective way. Most people I work with, given that they're health experts, literally have no idea what they're doing wrong. And they get off a sales call and they're like, okay, I really think that person's going to buy. And then the person ghosts them. Or they get off a sales call and they're like, oh, I feel really gross about that. I hate selling. That was so awkward. And whether or not the person buys, they just hate the experience. So if that's what you're experiencing as somebody who's doing sales calls for your health business, it's probably because you have some of these blind spots that you're not even realizing what you're doing, and you're sabotaging your opportunity to make sales, make more sales, raise your prices, feel good about those sales conversations, and really be growing your business on a week-to-week basis without hesitating or avoiding sales calls. I know that there's a big push in our industry right now for people to completely avoid sales calls. I actually think most people, especially newer business owners, need to be doing sales calls in order to get to know their ideal client, in order to make more sales, in order to really understand the objections that their typical client has before investing in their offer. And I'm not saying you can't get out of sales calls, but for most people we work with, they at least need to do sales calls for a period of time until they can really get confident about why their ideal clients buy and what kind of stuff needs to be addressed in the sales process so that the person can confidently say yes to their offer. So if your sales calls are not converting the way that you want, especially if you're getting a lot of price objections, it's probably not because your program is too expensive. It's more likely to be that you are experiencing these mistakes, and a lot of times they're very subtle mistakes that we just went over, in how you're leading the conversation. But when you're able to shift your beliefs, when you lead with the emotional connection instead of just the logical details, when you dig deeper into the person's why and the ripple effect that that transformation is going to create, and when you set clear decision-making criteria, you will start closing more clients and more high-ticket clients with a lot more ease and simplicity, and sales calls can actually become fun and profitable for you. So if you want to master the skill of sales with hands-on coaching and powerful tools that accelerate your growth, I would love for you to apply to work with me and my team inside the Nourished Business Accelerator. So inside this program, this is where we help you transform your entire approach to sales and really business in general. That way you can stop spinning your wheels and finally grow the online coaching practice that you've been dreaming of. So instead of wondering why people are saying no, wondering why you're getting so many price objections, thinking maybe I just need to lower my price, or getting off a sales call and feeling like it didn't go well, but just guessing at why it went wrong, instead of that, you can understand exactly where to improve, exactly what kind of cadence to have on a sales conversation, exactly what path to follow in that conversation so that you feel like you're leading the conversation well and that your ideal clients are easily able to see the value and say yes to themselves in your offer. And you'll have the tools and the coaching and even the custom chatbots to review your call transcripts so that it can all happen very quickly. This is one of those areas in the program that we have clients tell us all the time that they used to dread sales calls and now they are starting to really enjoy them because they're so confident that they're going to close 50, 60, 70% of those conversations when before they might have closed like 30%. So if you want to work with me and my team inside of the Nourished Business Accelerator, you can find me on Instagram at Laura Schoenfeld RD and DM me the word NBA. So yes, like the basketball league, NBA stands for Nourished Business Accelerator, and I'll give you all the details you need to apply for the program. When you submit your application, we'll let you know if you're approved. You'll have the opportunity to talk to someone on my team, whether it's me or one of our coaches, and we'll give you everything that you need to make a confident decision about whether or not the NBA program is the right fit for you. And I just really want to encourage you, because I know sales can feel really challenging when you're not somebody who's been trained in sales. You're a health expert, you're a coach, you're a trainer, you're a practitioner. Selling is not necessarily the thing that you're skilled at. And the good news is you do not have to be that good at selling in order to make sales, and even in order to make high ticket sales. Once you learn our essential, simple approach to sales calls so that you can confidently lead them, that you can get the right leads on the call, that they can come to that call already being one foot into your program because you've done a good job at expressing the value publicly, that you have the systems that facilitate that sale so that the sales calls go really well. Once you have all of that set up, everything else in your business is going to be so much easier. You'll be able to make more money, help people at a deeper level. You'll stop questioning yourself all the time about how you're doing on sales calls, and everything that you do in your business will start to be more fun and more profitable. So I hope you will apply for the NBA program. And most of all, I hope that this has been helpful for you to understand why your sales calls might not be converting at the rate that you want them to, and the most important mindset shifts to make in order to make more high ticket sales starting right away. All right, thanks for hanging out with me. I'll look forward to seeing you next week here on the show. Take care, everybody.